All right. Way to go, Jesse. You may have to have a conversation with Joe again as far as making sure when he closes down Thursdays, this is set up. Okay. We have officially begun because we've caught up with our technology. Or actually, Jessica has. All right, let's begin by talking to God, then we'll get rolling. Your message to those around us, but in living it out in our lives. Thank you that you have stepped into our history in the person of Yeshua, and that's the reason we come to you as we do now. Amen. Okay. We follow our usual protocol. First, those who are actually live and present here in the room. Any questions? You, not at the moment. All right. Then, next we go to the people that are on the screen who, or at least who are with us. We're on WebEx, right? Yeah, those who are with, because there are others who are joining us on YouTube that we can't interact with at this point. So, as it turns out, as I'm looking at the questions, those of you who are with us on the monitor were diligent enough to submit questions over the last couple of days. So since you not only submitted questions, but are present here, we'll start with those. All right. Some are simpler than others, and some are always so complex we never get around to them. Okay, the first question is, were Cain and Abel brothers? Okay. Do
There's
you want to
an
deal with
error,
this?
Rabbi.
No, you don't.
Well, I mean, what do you want me to say?
Whatever.
Rabbi.
Whatever you.
I'm not sure why this is a
Or,
question.
well, the quick answer is yes, Cain and Abel were brothers.
Was she going to say something? Oh, I thought you wanted us to stop.
Yeah, I wanted
Okay.
to clarify.
Yes,
that.
they were brothers.
Yeah, as far as I know.
As far as
I've never heard anything different.
yes, as far as the biblical text indicates. Do you want to do you have any reflections on just the Cain and Abel interactions that might be of
No, I don't.
okay. All right.
Yeah, unless there was
Okay.
further questions about.
All right. Any further questions on that? It's not often that we get to answer a question well as a yes, no.
So there was no background as to why that was a question?
No.
That's why.
Well, she's
Yeah.
she's there.
Oh, you
Oh, what's the sign say? Were they twins?
oh. Okay.
I've never heard that they were twins.
No, nor have I. Is that loud enough?
Should be.
Okay, were they twins? That's a very good question. Because you get a whole bunch of twins in the biblical texts. But
That's in Abraham's family.
yeah, in Abraham's family.
Can you hear me yet?
The text says quite literally in chapter 4, verse 2.
Hear you, but they can't.
Well, so with verse 1. Eve became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, with the help of the Lord, I brought forth a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now, I mean, you could read that as 10 minutes later, but the implication seems to be later on in a more general sense. So yeah, that actually now that question has been further clarified, I actually have heard in the past some people who thought that Cain and Abel were twins. But
Why would they think that?
I have no idea.
I
But
mean, I understand because our friend had twins, and she had the boy first, and then it was like 7 or 8 hours until she had number 2, twin and was born actually on a different
Different
date.
day, yeah. So we actually,
So that, but I don't, it doesn't seem in context that that's what it's saying. Otherwise, I think it would have mentioned something specifically, because that's an unusual situation.
now, a quick reflection on that. So we actually had twins grow up in this synagogue
Mhm.
who were twins.
They're not identical because one's a boy and
One's a boy and
one's a
one's a
girl.
girl. I was gonna say, were definitely twins, but they did not share the same birthday,
Yeah, so
which is, yes, which is
he
strange.
had to begin labor all
All
over
over.
again.
Yes,
And when I heard that, I was like,
it was a surprise.
yikes. But twins ran in her family.
Since we're off on that quick aside, because I happened to reflect on this literally 2 days ago. There is, how should I put it? I'm not sure I want to call it a tradition, but there is I was going to say downtown Jerusalem, actually Jerusalem, the old city. So in
In the Jewish.
the
faith?
original, yes, in the original downtown of Jerusalem, there is an old synagogue that we would visit. And there was a chair that was called the Elijah's
The
chair.
Elijah chair. Mhm.
And the tradition was,
That was in the curva.
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And the tradition was, if you were having trouble having kids, if you sat in the chair, it would facilitate having kids. Well,
And then we had, some people sat in it by proxy.
yes.
They sat in on behalf of other people. This is
I
me.
forgot. Yes.
I'm going to sit here and wait for them to be done.
And the reason I think they sat in by proxy is because this initial example that I'm sharing with you was before that. And having heard that, somebody sat in by proxy. Anyhow, they were having trouble having kids. So not just the mother, which was the tradition, sat in the chair, but the mother and the father both sat in the chair. And that's the couple that ended up with twins.
After they had a couple kids before.
But I don't know if we could blame the fact that they had twins on the fact that both of them sat in the chair instead of just one, but they did. And if I recall this story correctly, they did not expect to have twins.
Well, I think she found, well, twins ran in her family.
Yes, they ran in her family, but yeah.
If twins run in your family, I think you can't help but expect them.
Yeah.
Like they run in my family, but we didn't have to worry about that.
No.
Because they didn't run in your family.
No, it didn't run in my family. Anyhow, so Cain and Abel were brothers, but they were not twins, and they had a falling out because, what can we say?
That I have things to say.
Please,
about.
then do, because those are important things.
All right. So let me look.
So
it up.
more on
It's
Cain and Abel.
This is from Dr. Kaiser. So I think it's been approved. When you look at the text, they both bring their offering to God. Let me find it.
Somewhere after chapter 4, because that's what I
Yes,
was reading.
here it is, chapter 4. 4 verse 2. Second part of verse 2. Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, but Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. Now, please notice the wording of this next sentence. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry and his face was downcast. This also reminds me of something from the Newer Testament, but we can talk about that later. God looks at the offering and the person offering it. And then he looks at the offering and the person offering it. If you have a billionaire and he brings God an offering of $100, that means a whole lot different than someone who makes $20,000 a year and brings God $100. Does everybody see that? And so I think it's important. Many people have been taught, like many people, I'll say Christians have been taught that God did not approve of the grains, the things that were produced by growing. And he expected then for it to be a blood offering. And because it wasn't a blood offering, therefore God said, I don't like it. And we have no indication here whatsoever that that is what is going on. I think that is part of Christianity is very big on blood.
Well, and on reading sacrifice
Yeah.
and
Back
Newer
into this.
Testament stuff back into the Older Testament. Yeah.
I mean, we're told as much in this about this situation as we need to understand it. And I don't think that blood sacrifice was understood like maybe it was later on under the rest of the Tanakh. So I think that's always important. Remember the woman that Yeshua said she put a mite in, she put like a penny into the coffers at the temple. And Yeshua says what? Well, why did she even bother? She's so poor, she better save her money. Is that what he said? She gave everything she had, is what he said. Looking at everybody else. Everybody else is not giving everything they had. It is like a billionaire giving $100. Same sacrifice. Well, what's wrong with the one as opposed to the other? Well, look at the person and then look at the sacrifice. They sort of have to match up. They sort of have to match up. Not all sacrifices are the same. And definitely not all of them have the same context. So I think any way that people try to find something about blood in here, he looked on them both. And remember also that if you're bringing produce that you've raised, you have done maybe a lot more work than the person who's bringing a calf. Here's the calf, you fed him every day, but there's something about the process of cultivating and growing crops, and that's difficult. It's difficult. So,
cool.
And that even if you didn't know about all the rules for sacrifice later on in Exodus and Leviticus, you should realize from the story where Yeshua's mother visited the temple right after he was born, and you're told what she gave, right? And she gave a poor person's offering, correct? And all along the way, though, in the sacrifices, you could always give things that you have grown yourself, or food that you have made yourself, bread you have baked yourself, all those kinds of things. So I would never poo-poo the non-bloody sacrifice.
Yeah, and in fact, we've just now officially, as of last night or this morning, depending on when you had services, concluded the book of Leviticus. And one of the significant sacrifices in the book of Leviticus is what's called the grain offering. In other words, it's a non-blood or non-animal offering. So in that case, you could argue that Cain brought a grain offering.
That's not the problem. God's looking at the person and comparing it to the sacrifice.
There's a couple other things that you could noodle out of the text, so let me noodle with them just a little. It says, in the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, but Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. If that but is in fact intended there as a strong but, then right away you're told that there is something different between Cain and Abel, like Patrice was talking about. If you bring some of the grains or the produce, that doesn't necessarily indicate that they are the best quality of the produce. Whereas if you bring the firstborn of the animals of the flocks that you raise, you are providing the first portion and the best portion to the Lord. Would that make sense? So that, given the way the text is worded, that could very well be part of the issue here as well. Okay, and then there's one further thing. coming from a text that was written some 1,500 years after this text was written. Hebrews chapter 11, Hebrews says that by faith, Abel brought the offering or the sacrifice. So the understanding of how these texts were interpreted is given to us there. Apparently, it was not a by faith offering from Cain, but it was a by faith offering from Abel. And that gets back to what Patrice said earlier. It has to do with the character and therefore the response of the person offering it, not the nature of what is offered. Okay. All that out of that very simple question, which we simply answered to begin with, yes. All right, then, same person asks, this is a follow-up question. In looking through our notes, I found this question was originally asked, although not answered, months ago. So thank you for reminding us that we had not answered those questions. Two questions. This relates to another set of customs that are part of the tradition and heritage of Judaism. And let me do a quick intro that just popped into my mind about tradition and custom within Judaism. And even a more deeper dive into what's known as halakha, which is a little more than tradition and custom. It has to do with the accepted and acceptable guidelines that are part of the package of the faith or the religion that is called Judaism. The rabbis of old, as they were interacting on all kinds of questions, and if you think we have a lot of questions that we raise, you haven't even begun to read all the questions that the rabbis come up with or have heard other people come up with. So they would have these discussions. Sometimes they were strong enough to be called debates, but either way, they were discussions. And then there would be decisions made as to which of the various options which of them were going to be the ones that would become the guidelines. And those were written down beginning around the year 200, but they had been in oral form for centuries before. When these were first started to be written down, the statement was made, and this is in the Talmud itself, which is the writings related to these questions and the application of biblical text to more modern times. I say that sort of tongue in cheek. Modern times for them was the year 200, as opposed to the year 1400 when this text was written. But anyhow, bottom line is they would say there would be a majority decision, and they would also list the minority decision or decisions. And they argued from the very beginning, today's minority decision may well become tomorrow's majority decision, and the reverse. I may have put them out of order. Today's majority opinion may become tomorrow's minority opinion or decision. So all that by way of background. So the first question is, what is the current thought process on tattoos? In traditional Judaism down through the ages, tattoos have been frowned upon. I was going to say it a little stronger than that. Frowned upon, yes. In fact, forbidden in many parts of Judaism.
Not approved.
Not approved in many parts of Judaism. Several things to say about that. Number one, today's tattoos are not the same as the tattoos that are described in the biblical texts. And in fact, I'm going to try to stay focused on this because there are other things that are very much like this. Tattoos were treated differently then than they are treated now. And when we read the biblical texts, we need to remember that we need to read these texts through the eyes of those who wrote them and the eyes and the ears of those who read and heard them. In other words, in their historical, religious, and cultural context. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here. In the context in which the tattoo prohibition was written, tattoos or the marking of the skin was a way in which you acted in reverence to your God and on behalf of your God.
Mm-hmm. And it was also involved in not just with some kind of ink marking, but also cutting.
Cutting, yeah,
and
actually
with,
cutting up a though, yeah.
Yeah, and with scar tissue is involved with that. Yeah, it was a form of worship or
Mhm.
devotion to
Devotion, that's a good term.
as
yeah.
a prophet of other nations. And I think the original thing that we translate tattoo is this kind of marking of your body, and that is totally unlike what we have nowadays.
Yes.
Now, what I had heard a long time ago, I'm going to say early 70s. Well, if you have a tattoo, you will never be allowed to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. And I think that is no longer a deal. I don't think that is a dividing factor about, and which Jewish cemetery are you referring to? Maybe there are some that applies to, but I wouldn't say that's a rule across the board. Just like when Messianic Jews, if you were a Jewish person and you accepted Yeshua, then your family disowned you and you were driven out of the family and they never spoke to you again. It doesn't happen anymore like that. I mean, I'm sure there are some families. There's
But not
always going to
generally
be some
speaking.
very strict families, but generally, I don't even think it's a small percentage anymore. Every family, every Jewish family has somebody who married a non-Jew in it. They just do. You have a sister-in-law, you have a brother-in-law, you have a niece, you have a nephew. In fact, it's people who get weird about Christmas. You might not get weird about Christmas, but you know people who get weird about Christmas, and they don't have to be Jewish because some Christians are weird about Christmas.
Even more weird about.
Yeah, no, they get very. And the spring bunny, you can't say Easter bunny because that will ruin your life. It has to be the spring bunny, and your children will be very confused. I heard this out loud from somebody. We don't talk about the Easter bunny, and we don't talk about Santa. Okay, God bless you guys. Because when your children grow up and they find out you lied to them about the Easter bunny and about Santa, they won't believe in Yeshua. And I'm just going, I didn't say this out loud, but what on earth are you talking about? I'm getting a headache. Why would you pick that as why your children would turn against you? I believe that would be projection. But anyway, back to what was I saying?
Something related to tattoos, and modern.
That they kick you out of the family, and then Christmas. Well, you can't have Christmas. Why are you buying Christmas wrap? Why did you wrap that in Christmas? I said, we have relatives that are not Jewish, and so we give them Christmas gifts. Probably you have a family like that too. And I stare at them because some people, I mean, it's not that they have a glass house and they shouldn't throw stones. It's like the stones have broken all the windows and they can't see what's going on because they just are trying to be so holy compared to you pagan. Yeah, I just think this very judgy ideas and shaming someone else that you really don't know very well. All that kind of stuff has to just be quiet. Just be quiet. Are they doing something that's like robbing, stealing, murdering, slandering people? Well, then if you're just giving a gift with paper on it, then just say, "Well, isn't that nice?"
If someone were to ask, so is it okay for me to get a tattoo? My question would be, well, are you worshiping your God by getting the tattoo? And the person's going to give you a really strange look on their face. Well, if they're not doing it as part of their worship of God, and they're not cutting up their bodies as part of that practice, then it would seem that it doesn't fit the prohibition that's found in the biblical text. And
Because things have changed.
yeah, yes,
Things have changed in the past 100 years.
Yeah. Again, it has to do with what we started out with. When you're dealing with the biblical text, it needs to be understood in the context in which it was written and read. And our application of it then needs to take place, how should we put it, intelligently within the context of our culture and our time. Quick example that I use all the time is we are told in the biblical text, in the Torah, that we are to build a fence around our roof. Anybody here have a fence around their roof? Well, then we're all in violation of the Torah.
Everything's ruined now because you're not following the Torah.
And in Israel, you won't find a fence around the roof unless the roofs there are flat roofs. Because in those days, you put a fence around the roof because that's where you entertain people and you wanted to provide them with safety. The equivalent today, at least the Florida equivalent is, you put a fence around your swimming pool for the same reason. It's required to provide for the safety of those who live in our neighborhoods now. Okay, so just some fun and games related to tattoos. Since you brought up Christmas, I'm going to throw this in real quickly.
Sure.
Because that's another kind of thing. We're told that you shouldn't have Christmas trees because somewhere in Jeremiah it prohibits what is it, the cutting of the tree or something like that. And I forget, it's somewhere around Jeremiah 23, or maybe it's 29. But if you look up at the text, if you look at the text clearly describes the cutting of trees into idols, images. I don't know of anyone who creates their Christmas tree as an image, as a decorated pyramid, or whatever you want to call it. So that text does not apply to the Christmas tree at all. Because the Christmas tree has not been carved into the shape of an image or an idol. Okay, it's the same kind of thing that you need to be careful of the text as to what the texts are actually trying to communicate. All right, any questions on tattoos? Okay, then what's the current thought process on cremation? Again, traditionally, down through the years, the centuries in Judaism, religious Jews did not cremate their deceased relatives. They didn't cremate their alive relatives either. But sorry, that's just okay.
It was in bad taste.
That was in bad.
That doesn't mean we're not gonna laugh.
Too soon? Too soon. And there are still, this custom is far more widespread than the non-tattoo custom. Many, if not most, most, and a large number of Jews will not cremate their relatives. There are some who do. I am not familiar, in all honesty, with how and when this practice started. But we do know, as we read the biblical text, it appears that they interred their relatives and their friends, and we don't know the whole process that's involved. We do know that they did stay away from the old Egyptian process. What is it called?
Mummification.
Mummification. I was thinking about daddy issues rather than mummy issues. I'm sorry, it's been that kind of a day. So,
No comment.
and the reason for that is, what was the process? What did the process of mummification do? It was intended somehow to preserve the body. The biblical texts seem to indicate, and I'm not sure this is I'm not sure this is in command form. It seems to indicate it was simply to allow the bodies to naturally decompose. You know, the old sayings in Old English, dust thou art, and to dust shall thou return. Okay. And there has always been some thought, as in part of the discussion, that if you left the body to simply decompose, then that you were then indicating that you were believing that the body could be resurrected.
Even after it had been turned to dust.
Even if they've been turned to dust. Well, frankly, the body can be resurrected even if it's been mummified, and the body can be resurrected even if it's been cremated. So unless you have a strong commitment to the idea that you need to allow the body to decompose to express your faith that the body will be resurrected, I would say it's okay to cremate the body. Because if you cremate the body, you just turn it into dust or ashes a little more quickly. So maybe then you could argue that you're expecting the resurrection a little sooner. I'm not sure that that's the proper argumentation, but I mean, that's what you can use. And I'm not knocking any of those who still hold to the process of staying away from cremation.
It would, all right, this is my little, I have never actually thought of this until now, which is if you have these strong opinions about, well, the body has to not be muddled around with, then I don't know how you explain this problem to people from the Holocaust who were cremated. If you cast aspersions on those who are cremated, I don't think that bodes very well for the people who are cremated under their own choice.
Yeah.
So I would be hesitant about, making a broad statement.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. Now look, that issue has certainly been addressed by the rabbis post-Holocaust.
Sure.
As to how that even those who would be very, very religious and would forbid cremation, how they would respond to the fact that
it was not the choice of the
it was not the choice of the person, and therefore that person nor their relatives are held responsible. But it does then raise the issue of that kind of passing. Something else along that line popped in my mind, but it popped right out. So we'll just leave it at that. Okay, any further questions on either twins or tattoos or cremation?
Isn't there something about like when you're resurrected, you're kind of given new bodies?
Yes.
Yes.
So then that takes away from that idea, right? So it doesn't, to me, then that, I never thought it would matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If God created you one time, I think
Yeah.
he could create you again.
Do it
Yeah.
again. In case that didn't come across for those who were listening, would you swing around over here where the microphone is, or closer to the microphone? Yes, swing.
We're swinging here.
And just,
I'm not camera ready.
oh, well, then do it from that side.
Do it over there.
All right, now go ahead and raise the question again, Angie.
No, I said
Or,
that,
no, the observation, go ahead.
no, I said that, I read or believe that it says somewhere in the Bible that you would be given new bodies when we were resurrected. So then it shouldn't matter if we were cremated or not.
Exactly. And in fact, we are told, and this occurs largely in 1 Corinthians 15, we're told that the body, there's also reflections on this in 2 Corinthians 5. We're told that the bodies are going to be transformed. You can be transformed from a mummified body, or just the ashes or the remnants of a skeleton, or the ashes of whatever else. Okay. All right, we'll get to that in a second. Either way, in any of those situations, transformation can occur. And there is some argumentation based on 2 Corinthians 5 that the rabbi who wrote 2 Corinthians 5, Rav Shaul, expected to, at death, be transformed. Because the way in which he writes that first paragraph, the first 10 verses of 2 Corinthians 5, certainly seem to indicate that he was expecting that at the point of his death, he would also then experience the resurrection or transformation from one body to another body. Okay, yes, Virginia, your hand is raised.
I would like to also talk about when you taught us about Nadab and Avihu, who were cremated upon presenting themselves. And if I remember correctly, it was the first Talmudic discussion between Moses and Aaron, if I remember my teaching correctly. So in this, it was an introduction to what we're discussing now, that Aaron was supposed to be happy and that the future will come.
Okay, good observation, good recollection. And since we just had Nadav and Avihu, many English Nadab and Abihu.
Nadab and Abihu.
Anyhow, that was from several weeks ago in the book of Leviticus. Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is, who is the one who's responsible for the burning of those two sons of Aaron in the biblical text?
The sons were responsible because they did not
Nope.
follow directions.
How did they, thank you, Angie, you picked up on where I was going with that. How did they end up? And who was responsible for how they ended up?
God himself.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It would appear from the text that God cremated Nadav and Abihu. Okay?
Isn't the term they use swallowed up, the earth swallowed them up?
I don't know if
I
that's
can go.
that may have been the encounter of some others, Korach and
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes.
That's a different deal.
yeah. Because some of those the earth swallowed up, some there was some burning involved, if I remember. Wasn't-
Some were swallowed up that, because when you get to the daughters of
Zelophehad, yeah.
They mentioned that some of their kinsmen were swallowed up.
Yes,
Even though they were.
yeah, but correct. And so there was a swallowing up, but was there not also a blast of
Yeah, I think
a
so.
fiery blast as well
Yeah.
there too? So anyhow, okay, cool. Thank you.
Oh,
for
and
the-
one other thing that you've also taught us is that fire from the Lord cleanses and makes us holy. And that was part of the understanding.
Yeah,
Yes,
it can, yeah.
it can. And certainly, and we didn't do it this week, but we did it, I think, last week. We did Kadosh, 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 the third paragraph of the Amidah. That's the story of Isaiah. And what happened to Isaiah? He found himself in the presence of the God of the universe in all his splendor. And he said, I'm in deep doo-doo.
Isaiah 6,
Yes.
during his call.
Isaiah 6. He said, I'm in deep doo-doo. And then one of the angels came because he said, I'm a man of unclean lips. And what did one of the angels come and do? Applied a burning
A
coal.
burning coal, which burned his lips.
Yes. So as to purify. So you're correct on that, Virginia.
Mhm.
Okay. Boy, we spent more time on that than I thought.
Mhm.
All that out of a yes or no answer. Way to go. All right. A woman in my study objected to the prayer Yeshua taught because it says, give us this day our daily bread. She saw that as a demand. I pointed out that it was a very Jewish prayer and that David used similar language in the Psalms. I know in Hebrew there's an imperative form of the verb that would indicate demand. Does Greek have a similar case? Is this a simple translation problem? And then there's a second question that is unrelated, and we'll deal with that if we have time. Okay. The person who raises the question has in fact accurately reflected it.
Yeah, and there's a linguistic thing going on there too.
All right. Let you hop into the linguistic thing in a second.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let me deal with the very Jewish prayer. It is a prayer that many people have pointed out has great similarities to both parts of the Amidah and parts of Kaddish. So yes, it is a highly Jewish prayer. And also corrected David used similar language. And the other thing that we need to remember, and that is who's the one who instructed us to pray in this fashion. If you have a red letter Bible, you will find that this is in red letters. If you're not familiar with the red letter Bible, that's okay. These are the text in Matthew, and I think it's Matthew 6, is quite clearly a prayer that Yeshua taught his followers to pray. And if he taught them to pray, then it should be an appropriate prayer. Okay. Linguistics.
This woman.
Yeah.
Is worried about the appearance, I think, of commanding God to do
Yes,
something. She has a very sensitive spirit, and she's worried that, I don't know why she would say that you shouldn't do something that Yeshua said you should do. Right there, I have an issue with that. But let's just go back to she's a sweet, sweet spirit, and she doesn't want to be seen like bossing God around. But in so many languages, and I'm going to say that Greek is part of the family of languages, the Indo-European language. When we say we have a future tense, the way you translate future tense literally is you will do something in the future. And that sounds like a command, doesn't it? This will happen and that will happen and you will do this and that. That's simple future tense also. But in this prayer and prayers like this, because it is a Jewish prayer, they don't say please every three words. Maybe some Christians say please all the time. Please, 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 please. Could we have food tomorrow? Please, 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 please. Just because someone is not blessing the prayer with please, 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 please God, please God, please, that doesn't mean that that shouldn't be your attitude. But this concept of the future tense really can be seen as a command form and vice versa. The command form was, you will give us our daily bread. That's, if you translated word for word, that's what you would come out with. You will give us our daily bread. And that's a future, and that's a command sort of a thing. But that's Indo-European languages. I would hesitate to say that Semitic acts the same way. But it is how we translate things in our way of understanding language. What are you looking at?
I'm looking up a Hebrew translate it because we have the Hebrew translation of this prayer in the Siddur.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's a,
You know.
it is, there's nothing in the Hebrew that indicates that this is anything more than a simple request. Just like the next one is Slach lanu, forgive us, O Lord.
But it's not future tense though.
No, it's
in
not.
This version.
No, it's not. It is simply a request. Now, in answer to the second part of the question, I know in Hebrew there's an imperative form of the verb that would indicate demand. Does Greek have a similar case? Greek not only has a similar case, it has 2 or 3 similar cases.
Greek has a lot more command forms.
So is this a simple translation problem? No, I think it's, as Patrice has been indicating, an understanding problem. And I think Patrice, and I was also, just for the fun of it, seeing if the particle not was in there.
And it isn't.
No, it isn't. Not as I read through it quickly. So it's the idea of simply requesting to God in simple language, simple, straightforward language, what your request is. When we come to God, do we ask God to forgive us? How do we ask it? We say, forgive my sin or my bad attitude or whatever else. And we say the same thing to each other, right? Are we commanding the other person to forgive us? No, we're requesting that the other forgive us. And this is in the same format. The forgive, the give, the whole package is a request that's being made to God.
Yeah, that not. So there's that particle in Hebrew na. The easiest example I can give you is in the El Shaddai, the song El Shaddai. So El Elyon na Adonai.
Very good.
So Most High God, na means if you please, Lord. So na would be shoved in, and like we would say, please, 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 but it's much easier to shove in a na than it is to shove in please, 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 please. If you wouldn't mind, if it's not too much work, or however you want to say how in advance that you are very, very grateful. You will continue to be very grateful in the future. See, it's that wrapped up idea of command is also in the future.
Yeah.
Have we confused enough of that? Have we been confusing enough?
Is that clear enough and communicatable enough to the person that you're interacting
She
with?
simply wasn't buying it.
She wasn't buying that Yeshua said to do that?
She's a new believer from a Jewish family, and that's why I wanted to get another perspective, because I knew what I believed, but I want to say it to her in a good way.
All right,
And to me, it's a heart matter, and it's like some of the other stuff you've talked tonight. You know, when you bring a sacrifice, where is your heart? I mean, you can say, "Give me my daily bread," or you can say, "Give me my daily bread." I mean, you can come
Please.
with a humble heart, or you can come with a demand.
Mhm.
And in English, you don't have different ways of saying it. You say it the same. It's the heart that makes the difference.
Correct.
It could be the heart. It could be, like you just indicated, the tone of voice.
Mhm.
It's certainly the attitude.
Mhm.
You find the same kind of approach that you find in the disciples' prayer. You find the same kind of approach throughout the various sections of the Amidah, which are all addressed as requests to God, but would use the same kind of formulation. Let me see if I can find a quick one. Oh, okay. This is paragraph 10. This is not done on Shabbat, but it is in fact done in daily prayer. See how much the same this sounds. Sound the great shofar, granting our freedom. Raise the great banner to gather our exiles and assemble us together from the four corners of the earth. Are these demands being made of God? These are the daily prayers that have been part of the daily prayers for at least 2,000 years. And you can try to argue that they are a demand or a command.
Sound bossy.
Or sound bossy, but no, these are simple, straightforward requests. And what I would suggest to the friend that you're dealing with is get your copy of the Siddur, show her how we've always done it from the Amidah, and then let her see it in Hebrew in the Siddur. And maybe that'll help. Okay.
So it sounds like on the surface, she's very sensitive to being bossed around.
Good. Yeah.
And so she projects that onto the Lord.
Okay.
Which is, I understand that.
Yeah, and you don't want to be demanding.
No.
But you do want to make your request.
We used to have, he no longer comes to our synagogue, but when he would pray publicly, this guy, he literally say, "Oh, dear God, please do this, dear God, dear God." Every 5 words, he was like putting, as he was saying it, like we would say, you know, we're thinking of the next thing. But instead of saying, he would just put in, "Oh God, oh God." And after a while, I'm just like, I can't pray very well because this is really annoying me because he didn't, it was very strange. It was very strange. So,
Yeah. Now, David used similar language, so you've all heard of Psalm 23. You've all,
Oh, he's bossing everybody around right
Yeah.
there.
you've probably heard of Psalm 24. So I'm going to read Psalm 25. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul, and you I trust. All right. Opening lines. The very next line. Do not let me be put to shame. And then
That sounds pretty bossy.
two verses later. Show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth. Okay. Like you said, these are not demands of God. These are requests of God. So it's the same with Tefillat HaTalmidim, the disciples' prayer. Okay. This one's my fault. Because, and the questioner puts it that way. You mentioned in class that there was a rupture in the Godhead as Yeshua was dying. I did mention that in part of our conversation in Thursday's class, so this is very current. There's so much scripture about the Lord never abandoning us. Is it possible that in taking on the sin of the world, Yeshua was truly separated from the Father, wasn't truly separated from the Father, but felt like he was? That's a good question and a very legitimate question. But to provide some background into why the question was raised and why we had the discussion, it was in the context of a discussion that is now going on for a couple of weeks on the Jewish sources for the deity of the Messiah, and therefore how that impacts the whole concept of the Trinity. One of the arguments for the deity of Yeshua is sort of I think we ended up calling it a logical argument. Look, not all arguments are logical, and not all logic is logical, because logic has its own rules, and some people who try to use logic don't follow the rules. Different conversation. Also part of the apologetics course, by the way, both at the beginning and will appear again at the end in a couple weeks. But anyhow, several weeks ago, we were answering the question, won't a good life get me into heaven? And then we asked a related question even earlier, and I can't remember exactly how we phrased it. But anyhow, the idea was what God requires is, if we're trying to go that route, is then not just a good life, but a perfect life, one lived by all of his standards. And certainly within Judaism, we've taught down through the ages, and it's written in James as well. If you follow all the guidelines, but omit even one, then you are as if you had violated them all. And you have reflection of the same kind of thing, if I recall correctly, both in Hillel and Gamliel, or Gamaliel. So, well, if I haven't lived up to the standards, how can I be, if I'm in danger, how can I be rescued? Well, someone else can come along who volunteers then to die in my place for my sins, just to use that straightforward kind of analogy. What's the problem? For someone to die in my place for my sins, that person would have to be perfect and not have to
Die for their own
be
sins.
accountable. Yes, be accountable and have to die for their own sins. Okay, so suppose you find the perfect person, and this perfect person is also willing to die in your place for your sins. That's great for you. It does nothing for me, because it's only one person. For someone to die on behalf of everyone's sins, that person needed to be perfect, and Rav Shaul argues that he was. 2 Corinthians 5, toward the end. He not only has to be perfect, but he also has to be infinite to cover the ransom for an infinite number of people. What is the cost of, or what is the penalty for sins? It is death or separation from God. Yeshua is and claimed to be that infinite perfect person, therefore he could be that perfect sacrifice. And if he was going to be that sacrifice, then what? Then he had to have experienced that separation from God that we would have experienced. And then somebody in the class then right away said, if you were in the class, you'd be the person who was sitting next to you, as it turns out in the class, and you know the person, so I won't mention her name, but she correctly said, yes. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And yes, he did say that, and it's a quote from Psalm 22. If we take that seriously, then it would appear that there was, in fact, for 3 hours, a rupture in the Godhead.
Mhm.
We have enough trouble trying to explain the Godhead. How do we go about explaining a rupture in the Godhead? I leave that in somebody else's hands who is infinitely more intelligent than I to explain it to us. And as the rabbis of old used to say, when the Messiah comes, he'll tell us. But in the meantime, it would seem that that is what is being communicated. In 3 hours, Yeshua suffered the totality of separation from God for all of the world's population. Then, now, and in the future. So that's some of the, how should I put it, consequent impact, repercussions for what took place there. So I would say, yes, it wasn't just that he felt like it, but that he actually experienced it. There's another reason for arguing that it wasn't just, because to say he felt like it, that is a reasonable response to this question, that he just felt it. That works in a Western world. It does not work in an ancient Near Eastern world. Because the idea was not just feeling, but experience of what you were feeling. In other words, he truly experienced this. And if he didn't truly experience it, then he didn't actually carry the accountability that would have been ours in experiencing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just had to wrap my mind around it because I've been in the place where I've, felt like, well, where's God? What's going on in
Yes.
my life? And what I really rely on the scripture that says he's always there. He's never going to abandon me.
Yes.
He's never going to forsake me. And it's just me that's messed up. And so the idea of a rupture in the Godhead is uncomfortable.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's only for 3 hours. Yeah, I think that whole time period of the day of the crucifixion and then through to the resurrection, I think it's very mysterious. I think it's not something maybe we're even intended to be able to explain, because a lot of people mistake if you know the Apostles' Creed and you read through the Apostles' Creed, some churches read through it every week. It says in one part of that, he descended into hell. And this, we had this conversation several years ago. I went, he didn't really walk in hell. That's not what happened. But it seems like people have glommed down to that idea that he was in hell. No, he was separated from God. And if that is your definition of hell, okay. But then you can't fall into the trap of thinking of hell as a real actual place that human beings are going to go to, because he didn't go to hell. He was dead. He was separated from God. And that, I think, it's tricky. Right in there is where we sort of can't explain the process or what we're supposed to get out of it unless we take it by faith that he was separated from God. And it was his choice to do that.
Yeah.
He wasn't being punished for anything except for he chose to be punished.
So you're saying he didn't literally just send down there
That
to do
is-
something?
That's correct.
That's correct.
I was wondered about.
I know,
Did
it-
he
it
go
makes-
down there like, gotcha.
It makes no, oh, and then the picture is, he brings a whole pile of people from hell, out of hell, like in a parade or something. And
right.
you know, that's not exactly right either. Correct?
Yeah.
We talked through it ourselves, and it is quite mysterious how and what happened for those 3 hours, but I
Yeah.
guess they'll have a videotape if it's at all possible.
Okay. It is derived from somewhere. It's derived from a misunderstanding of a text of either First Peter or Second Peter, I forget which Peter it was. And
St. Peter, different book.
thank you for picking up on that. Anyhow, so that's where it comes from. But the text, if read carefully in its context and both grammatical and literary, is not talking about him going to hell, but it talks about the fact that he back that up just a second, take a little more context. Peter's answering a question that arose. What about those who died and never got a chance to encounter God? And I think in this particular context in Peter, it has to do with those of the era of the flood. And what about them? Why didn't God save them? And did they not have an opportunity to respond to God? And the text says something along the lines of, he went and preached to those who are now in hell.
Mhm.
He did not say he went and preached in hell. He went and preached to those who are now in hell. In other words, Peter's responding by saying, those who are now under God's judgment are not there unfairly because they had an opportunity to hear the message. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's now been a long time. It just occurred to me, I was the one who translated First and Second Peter for the
Well, then you better get
for the
it
Tree of
together.
Life, so I better get it together for the Tree of Life version. Anyhow, Peter argues, look, these people heard the message for 120 years as Moses preached the message to them. So
You
it's
mean
not,
Noah.
yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Do that all the time, swap Moses and Noah. Noah went and preached for 120 years. So what he's saying is they had an opportunity. And in Genesis 15, God says, and as part of the extension of the Abrahamic covenant, God says that Abraham's descendants will be out of the land for 430 years. And then it says, this is because God is extending his grace to the Canaanites because their judgment is not yet, or their cup is not yet full. In other words, they haven't been given all the opportunities that God in his graciousness intended to give to them. And if you want to know more about the Canaanites, take one of her classes, because boy, were they a bad, dastardly people. And yet God gave them over 400 years to respond to the message that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob left behind. Same with Noah.
And Romans 1 says that too.
Yeah.
That God has been fair.
Yes. So,
and letting everybody know what's going on, but people turn away.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to believe it.
how did we get onto that? Oh, we were talking about what
The
the
return
rupture
of
in Godhead, and did Yeshua go to hell? One other thing, Yeshua's dying, and he's got this mocking, cynical dude on one side, and he's got this sympathetic and responsive dude on the other. What does he say to the one who's responsive?
He's the light tonight, he'll be dying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
close to
you'll
it.
be
He
with
said,
me in paradise.
today
Yeah.
you will be with me in paradise.
Paradise.
Okay, if he was there, then we've got a couple different options. if Yeshua went to hell for 3 days, then this poor dude, he dragged to hell for 3 days, and he had hellish food for 3 days. Or he didn't go to hell, but then went to paradise, and this person went with him. Why? Because he acknowledged who he was dying next to. So all that as part of the interaction with the discussion of an important question. Did Yeshua go to hell for 3 days, as at least one, if not a couple of the creeds indicate?
I don't think they say for 3 days. They say for,
He went down.
Yeah,
He
that's
said
right. That's right.
Yes,
It may not have
exactly.
been for 3 days. You're correct.
right. I was thinking of 3 hours on the cross that usually is.
Yeah.
When he says, then he says it is finished.
Yeah.
At the end of those 3 hours. So I'm assuming it was finished.
The job's done, it's completed. That's right, very good. That's a very good part of the response. He didn't then go down into hell if he says the job's already done. Right?
Yeah. And that's what's said at the end of every Passover meal.
I was going to say that. Yes,
So
exactly.
he's really
Yeah,
saying the same thing that they would expect to say at the end of Passover, which they're going to do the next day.
I think it's a section called Nirtzah, but it says, all these, now we have accomplished all these things. It's the same kind of language that you find.
Yeah.
Across. Okay. And I thought we'd have time for a couple more questions. But any questions on what we've discussed thus far, or some of the implications or tangents arising for those questions? I really thought we'd been getting into this question, especially since it's most appropriate. The text from this week dealt with the Jubilee year. This question related to the Jubilee year. Do we want to do just a quick 5-minute response to this? Just because
I don't think it begs for much
it may not.
more.
I was reading in this week's Parsha of Bahar that it says twice about the Jubilee year. Each person shall return to their ancestral heritage and to their family. And I reflected on this very briefly as part of the drash last night. I'm tempted to say go. The question was submitted before the drash. So I'm tempted to say, go get the recording of the drash. But anyhow, it struck me in the gospel accounts of the birth of Yeshua that it says that every person was returning to his hometown because of a sentence declared by Caesar. But what if this also coincided with a Jubilee time and everyone was returning to their family heritage to renew their land leases and check up on things? Well, that's a very interesting question. What if?
I'm sure there's somebody who has calculated
Yes.
when the closest year of Jubilee should have been
Yeah.
to Yeshua's birth.
Yeah. And look, is it possible that they coincided? Oh, yes, it's very possible. Because down through history, all kinds of things related to God coincide with things that are anything but godly. I'm trying to remember a couple of them that are traditionally associated with I'm drawing the blank. This is not good.
What's the topic?
The summer, not holiday.
Tish B'Av?
Tish B'Av. Thank you. Tish B'Av. The tradition is that bad things happen on that day. The tradition is that the spies brought back their negative report on Tish B'Av. The tradition is, and it may be accurate historical tradition, that the first temple was destroyed on Tish B'Av. The tradition is that the second temple was destroyed on Tish B'Av.
The 9th of the month of Av.
9th of the month of Av. So I was going to say Tu B'Shvat, and I knew that wasn't it.
That would be the new year for the trees.
Which we just celebrated or reflected on it 2 or 3 weeks ago. So the point is that sometimes you have these historical interactions with important dates on the Jewish calendar. So could this have happened during Yeshua's birth? Oh, yes, it could have been. It would be interesting if it did, but we don't know. And there's a second question that's really, I'd like to see if we can explore this idea a little and check if there are records of a Jubilee that year and how it was observed in the time of Herod's temple. We're not quite sure how it was observed in the time of Herod's temple. Go ahead.
I really hate to disappoint people with this answer. but we have no record. There's no
Yeah.
record that the year of Jubilee was ever celebrated. Ever. So, if it was that'd be nice, but we have no record that it ever happened any year. I had to tell our nephew Toby that because he was all hyped up about year of Jubilee, which they calculated to be like a couple, 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, yeah, we have no record that it was ever celebrated. And you could just see he was deflating like a balloon, like, oh, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
we have to say what we can say and things we can't say. And I don't think we can assure anybody that about any of those things.
I'm sure you can Google this fairly readily, and I think what you will find is that there are several,
Or Wikipedia.
or
also.
Wikipedia, there are several calculations as to when the year of Jubilee would have occurred. And then would it have lined up with the time of the birth of Yeshua? You also have some discussion as to when the birth of Yeshua occurred, by the way. So you've got two not so clear timelines that you would have to set up, and it could be that they concurred, which would be cool. It would be very much like God for that to take place. But it could very well be that they didn't. And it could be, and we'll only check on this from hindsight, that when Yeshua returns, it will be coinciding with what would have been the year of Jubilee.
That'd be
Who
very
knows?
convenient. But I don't think we can
No.
say
Again.
for sure that's going to happen.
So that's a very good question coming out of the, a good couple questions coming out of the reading for this week. And a good reflection on the way in which God causes history to tell his story in so many different ways with these interlocking and interacting dates and celebrations. Let me give you one that I will argue for, and if you don't like the argumentation, come see me next semester. It will occur toward the end of the course called Jewish Roots and Foundations 1. I argue that the birth of Yeshua took place on the first night of Hanukkah. And those of you who've been in the class have interacted with that. And appropriately, I used to give 10 reasons. And then I thought, no, if we're talking about Hanukkah, let me combine a couple. So I now give 8 reasons for why Yeshua was born.
You used to make fun of people like this.
I know. So anyhow, so yes, that was an important concurrence.
Mhm.
But does everything happen like that? No, but many things do. And the likelihood is when Yeshua returns in what is called the rapture, and we're not going to get into that whole argument. My argument is that that will occur on some Rosh Hashanah.
We won't be surprised. if
We
that
won't be
happens.
surprised. Now, in the year 2000, there was
In the
this,
year
there were some who argued that on January 1st, 2000 would be the day when Yeshua comes back. And we
How's
have
that
never,
work?
we have at the blowing of the shofar, because the text says the shofar will sound and the dead in the Messiah will rise. And
What time zone?
Yeah, and he will arrive. For that Rosh Hashanah and the blowing of the shofar, and I don't remember Gary ever blowing it better than that day, because he was blowing it to that tune. Not that he was expecting it. We had the largest attendance for Rosh Hashanah that I can recall.
Because it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
So
What was the
Rosh
name of this
Hashanah,
book?
the Rosh Hashanah of the year 2000.
Oh, no, 88 too. There was a big
It-
hubbub in
yeah.
88.
No, yeah. No, I was thinking about Rosh Hashanah in the year 2000. Oh, and then, we also had a large crowd, yes, for Rosh Hashanah in 1988.
And when we were in the other
Big-
building.
Because there was a book out, 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Returning, in the year
And
1988.
and he sold them out, those books. He
Oh.
was, I can't imagine that he didn't wind up being extremely rich from selling that. And then when it didn't happen,
Hold on,
he changed it to,
someone from one of the religious stations here in this area actually set up an interview with him and asked me to be part of that interview. So we went back and forth. And I asked at the end, what happens if he doesn't come back in the year 1988? He gave some sort of an ambiguous answer. Well, you know what happened in the year 1989? He wrote another book, Why Jesus is coming back. in
Why I was wrong the
1989.
last time, basically.
So he made some more money. And I'm not saying that he did it just to make money. So don't misunderstand me here.
Could have been 99 reasons to come back at
You know,
99.
yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, you can just sell a book every year.
So there you go. So some of the things that relate to history and interacting of history on certain days. And it appeared that you had a question.
Oh, did you tell I was thinking?
Yes, I was looking at it. Yeah, that's okay.
But I was wondering what the difference would be. Is it UJMC
UMJC?
and MJA? What are the difference between organizations?
Okay, I was asking you what the difference is
Yes,
in the two Messianic Jewish organizations.
that's an excellent
or
question.
two of the Messianic
That's an excellent question. But
organizations.
let's hold that off because we're almost at 8:30. And the interesting thing is, Angela, is that somebody else, including one of the question answers, one of the question askers that we have answered questions for before, asked a question that related to not those two particular organizations directly, but to those kinds of approaches. And so, yes, that would be a good question to pursue, but to be fair to both organizations, we need to give it more time than we have now. But excellent question. And I'm just to complicate it further, there's also the MJRC, Messianic Jewish Rabbinic Council.
And there's other organizations
Yes.
too.
But
Yeah.
but the
They're
two
the
that you
biggest one.
mentioned,
They're the
the
biggest ones.
MJAA and the UMJC are the two biggest ones and the areas where there are the greatest differences.
Yeah, people have said, not so much maybe lately, but when we first got involved in Messianic Judaism, they would come up and they go, well, how come there's division? Why aren't you all just getting along? Why aren't you all just like members of the same club? And I just looked at them. I went, yeah, but then you would require some of us to be listening to teaching that we don't consider to be
Valid.
correct.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a normal human thing.
And there's sort of a whole other kind of dimension to this as well. It's not unusual in Judaism to have differences.
Correct.
We have 4 major and some additional subgroupings, forms of Judaism today. Okay? And then you have that classic joke. If you ask 2 Jews 1 question, you'll get at least 3 answers and 4 more questions. Because it illustrates, and that now will come full circle, illustrates what the rabbis in Talmud said. Today's minority position may become tomorrow's majority opinion, and the reverse. Because the rabbis understood that as time and people and societies develop, the application of these timeless principles would look different in different settings. And having come full circle, we should close. And I will say this, having come full circle, we're off for the summer.
Oh, is this our last one?
This is our last one for the summer because that's why I felt real bad about this, Angela.
We might be able to give you a preview some Shabbat. Yeah, might be able to chat with you about that.
But it's a very important question, as Patrice indicated. And so is the one that this other person asked. It relates to that as well. So yes, our June, July, and at least early August are very complex, complicated, packed. And people are here, there, and everywhere now. Well, they haven't even waited till June. We've got people who are already on the road. They left last weekend. We got people leaving this weekend. We got people leaving next weekend. We got people leaving the following weekend. And they're on their summer trips, and it's only May. So
we're going to be going to two countries where they're at war. So please pray for us.
Second week of June, we will be teaching once again in the Ukraine. And the first week of August, we will be conducting a wedding in Israel. So yeah, keep us in prayer, keep the situations in prayer. And
the airline situations.
And the airline situations, especially with the fuel. Because it's one thing to lose the opportunity to teach in Ukraine. And it's an opportunity to teach some 24 leaders of Messianic Jewish Russian-speaking congregations. But if we'd have to postpone the wedding, that's even. Yeah, that's an even. And in case you're wondering, for those of you who know, one of our cantors' weddings. It's Jacob Long's wedding. And so
Jacob
those
and
of you who've been
Siona.
here, Siona has come to the synagogue when she was in town.
She's a sweetie pie.
So there we go. All right, all that to say, what is it? Goodbye, so long, no, so long, goodbye, Auf Wiedersehen.
You want me to sing it for you?
I was gonna sing it, then decided it would not be a good idea for me to
So
sing.
long, goodbye. Saying adieu,
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 that's it.
adieu to you and you and you. Then I have to. I could sing the whole song, but I'm not going to.
Okay, and on that sweet note, would you close for us in prayer?
Avinu Malchenu, our Father and our King, we thank you and praise you for helping us to understand things, teaching us your intentions, teaching us how to apply your word. Father, we are grateful that you have left us your word and that we can study it and we can try to figure out things, which is an exciting road to travel on when we're trying to figure out what comes next or what we should carry along with us as we walk along with you. Help us to see a few steps in advance that we can continue to walk with your hand in our hand and not get off the path or get onto a wrong path. Father, we realize that every good thing comes from you, that you protect and you heal our loved ones, our friends, our families, and we thank you for your grace to us, your wonderful goodness that you shower on us, whether we deserve it or not. We thank you. So be with us this summer, us all, as we sort of scatter our own ways and bring us back safely. Then again, in the fall. B'Shem Yeshua Meshachenu, in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.
Yeah, I really felt bad when you asked that question, knowing that we weren't gonna, we won't be doing this summer.
Now I just-
Well,
I don't know.